Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Road to NM series. I'm National Master Dave Mohan, and last time we talked about jumping from being unrated, or a complete beginner, to 1700. And today we're going to talk about jumping from 1700 to 2000. Another big jump, and that 2000 mark, the expert level, is one that a lot of players want to reach, and is definitely a big milestone on the way to National Master. So let's go ahead and get started with our tips. So tip number one to jump from 1700 to 2000 is to convert your passion for your openings into out-preparing your opponents. So last time we talked about playing openings that you're passionate about. Don't necessarily follow advice to play the most solid openings, the most solid, boring variations, and don't even necessarily follow the advice to pick one line and stick to it. Just play whatever you feel passionate about. That's something I strongly believe in. And this time I'm going to expand on that a little bit. Once you've already hit 1700-ish and you're looking to make another 300-point jump, you have to take the openings that you're passionate about and deeply prepare them to the point that you're catching your opponent in your preparation. So once you get to 1700 and want to push for 2000, it's really important that you begin deep diving into your openings to catch your opponent off guard. Like I mentioned in the previous video, understanding your openings deeply can help you achieve favorable middle games and even end games in some situations. So let me show you some examples from my own experience. Once I hit 1700, I started playing this opening called the Coley system, or the Coley system. And that starts with 1 d4. And my opponents would often go for this Queen's Gambit decline structure with d5, Knight f6, and e6. And this looks like the most boring position that you can have in chess, completely symmetrical. But actually, due to my preparation and passion for the opening, I was able to understand the position and even prepare a little trap that's pretty common in the Coley system. So in this position, white plays the knight into e5. You'll see this idea in some Torre attacks, London systems, and Coley systems. It's a pretty common idea when black's bishop is here on e7 instead of on d6. We can jump into the e5 score with our knight. And the idea behind this is we're getting ready to push our f-pawn to f4. So we're getting ready to create quite the attack here. So black plays queen c7, and now this is an actual game of mine. I played f4, b6, and now rook to f3, just lifting the rook, getting ready to attack. This is called a rover in some chess circles, rook up and over. The idea is to involve the rook in the checkbaiting attack and expand on the king side. So now bishop to b7. Black is playing pretty natural moves. I've talked about this concept in previous videos, how oftentimes you can capitalize on opponents' bad moves, even if they don't look bad. A lot of moves seem quite normal, but they're actually allowing you to do whatever you want in the position. And this position is a pretty good example of that because now we just go rook to h3. Black is sort of playing on the queen side with all of his pieces and totally disregarding everything that's happening over on the king side. And black gets duly punished for this. After rook to c8, white has a pretty cool tactic. Go ahead and pause your videos if you want to try and solve it. I'll give you a second to do that. Alright, so here the key move for white is bishop takes h7. Very nice tactic. And after knight takes h7, which is all but forced, now we play queen to h5. And now there's going to be an inevitable mate. So I'll show those lines. If black goes for knight to f6, we have the simple queen h8 mate. And if black goes for rook f to d8, trying to create space for the king to run, we have queen takes h7 and queen to h8 mate. So black has no way of escaping from this. So here's a pretty simple example of out-preparing your opponent and getting quick wins. Obviously the goal isn't to win in less than 20 moves every time you play, but the main purpose is to out-prepare your opponents. Understand your opening positions so well that you have these traps and tricks set up that you know if your opponent plays on the wrong side of the board, you can capitalize on that and take advantage of their play by focusing on an attack on the particular side of the board that you want to focus on. Let me give another example. So in addition to the Coley system, I also played the English opening for a while between 1700 and 2000, again showing that you don't have to stick to just one opening. If you're passionate about something, you can go for it. So 1c4 is the English opening, and now this is another game of mine from the Phoenix Open actually, and I played knight to c3, and black goes for the Nimzo Indian. Now, if white plays pawn to d4, it's just a normal Nimzo Indian that we can expect. You could see pawn d4, bishop to b4, queen c2, and suddenly we've transposed to a normal Nimzo Indian. But in the English opening, white retains the option to go for the sharper pawn to e4. Hikaru Nakamura has some nice games here, and a lot of top grandmasters play the English. So black plays d5, white plays e5, d4, takes. Lots of captures, and now the black queen is a little bit misplaced on f6. We go bishop to d3, c5. My opponent was trying to stop d4 ideas, try to develop the knight behind the pawn. So knight to f3, knight c6, and bishop to e4. A kind of strange looking move, and as far as I know, you don't really see this maneuver anywhere else in any other opening where you go bishop d3, bishop e4 so early in the game. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you've seen this before. But after bishop to e7, getting ready to castle, I played d4. And now c takes d4. Go ahead and pause your videos if you want to find the tactic. Oftentimes in chess, we shouldn't just recapture on autopilot. We should always see if there's any intermezzo, any intermediate move that we can do. And here, indeed, there is an intermezzo. We can play bishop to g5, trapping the queen on f6. So this is another good example of how catching your opponent out of their preparation and preparing yourself in openings that you're passionate about can be of crucial importance. Alright, so that leads me into tip number 2. Sharpen your calculation. This one's quite simple. One way that this can be done is by doing tactics regularly. The more tactics you do, the stronger your pattern recognition will be. Now, up until 1700, I actually didn't do very many tactics. I always used to think that, oh, these are such crazy positions that I never get in my games, so why should I do these tactics? But actually, the more tactics you do and the more patterns you see, the more applicable they are to your games. Oftentimes in your games, you're not just going to magically stumble upon positions where you have some great tactic, but knowing pattern recognition, recognizing certain patterns in chess, will help you set up those tactics. So it's not just finding tactics in a random position spontaneously, but it's trying to set those up, knowing certain patterns that you come to know through tactics. Like I mentioned before, you should really challenge yourself to do as many tactics as possible. This will really sharpen your calculation. Also, start challenging yourself by playing blindfold games. Games in which you dictate moves to your opponent without actually having a board in front of you. These will help a lot in your normal games as you'll be able to envision things much more clearly. Definitely when I hit 1700, I started playing a lot of blindfold games, and this helped a lot. Now, this is very hard to do. I want to emphasize that. So don't be discouraged if it's messy at first. When I played blindfold games with friends, we notated the games, and I would often have to run through the notation multiple times during the game, oftentimes completely losing track of the position altogether. Next, if your tactical sense is getting strong enough, you'll eventually get to the level at which you can clearly see the chessboard in your mind, as well as whatever position you're trying to calculate. So the ultimate goal is to be able to calculate a position during the game without looking at the board. And this is really important for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's not a tell. If you're looking at a particular side of the board, your opponent won't know what you're calculating. But even more importantly, you will be able to calculate deeper. You'll be able to see lines through to the end, as opposed to having this sort of cloudy feeling. I know when we're not sharp, we've all been there, where we're trying to calculate something, but it's all cloudy and we can't really see the position at the end. So playing blindfold and doing tactics will help a lot with this. Alright, that leads me into tip number 3. Begin preparing for specific opponents before tournaments. So if you want to reach the 2000 level, general preparation will no longer be enough. If you're playing in a local tournament and know generally who will be playing, make sure you prepare for specific players. Oftentimes there will be a roster up beforehand of players who have signed up for the event. Go through that, look them up online, look them up on chess.com, try to see what they're playing. And if they play specific line, which in some cases players play pet lines that are not very good, you can prepare specifically for these and take advantage of these lines during your games. That's something that I've definitely done a lot in the past. I had a friend and training partner who I grew up with. He's also a national master now, a very strong player in his own right. And he and I both jumped up from 1700 to 2000 around the same time by doing exactly this. So basically what we would do is before tournaments we'd look at who's playing, see all the strong and titled players in the event, and devote our preparation efforts to those specific players. So particularly the titled players and strong experts, we'd go ahead and look them up on Google, on chess.com, try to figure out what they're playing. And since he and I both played relatively the same openings for the most part, we were able to come up with some nice ideas that we could use against these players, and that helped us progress a lot. And now we're both national masters. So that strategy clearly worked out for us. Alright, so I'm going to try and keep this video short and sweet. Stay tuned for part 3 of the Road to NM series. That's going to be coming soon. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I take note of every single comment that's in there, and I will respond within a day. So go ahead and do that and subscribe for the latest content. Alright, I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.